Hello people, welcome back to Gran Turismo Sport. This is round 2 of the AOR Season 13 Gran Turismo Sport League, and as you can see we are at Nurburgring. As I said last week, I'm not particularly comfortable at this track, but I've probably put in about 200 laps worth of practice, and I feel okay now. I'm still not perfect, but it's one of those things where it's just a track that I'm just bad at in general.
Slightly wide.
I'm on my qualifying lap right now, and you can see that I was a little bit wide at turn 3, but I'm still purple for now. But what I found was I could do high 56s in qualifying mode, but there was just no grip on the day whatsoever. For some reason, I don't know what it was. My back end was just coming out, which for the Hyundai is just weird because that understeers rather than oversteers. And I just wasn't comfortable turning. I wasn't comfortable putting the throttle down, braking, or anything. So midway through the lap, I just knew that I just had to limit the damage. And it was I was hoping for a P2 in qualifying, but obviously this lap hasn't been particularly good. So you can see that Wobbuffet there did a 57.3, and I thought I'm going to struggle to beat that. And as you'll see in a couple of seconds, Hasne now does a 56.8, which I knew I was not beating. As soon as that came up, I knew that I was not beating it. And I did a 57.4, which is 7/10 off my best, which is awful, really. I should have been much higher than that. Like, Steve-O had exactly the same problems there in 4th. He also struggled to get any sort of grip, but he beat me by a 10th. And then obviously Racing Green will come along, take pole by about 7 years or something like that. 6 tenths by the looks of it, and 1.1 faster than what I did, which we all expected by now.
I felt like I had no.
So into the race start. So 5th place. I was always going to go as far to the inside as I physically can, because I do not want to be involved in any incident. But annoyingly, Bloody got a really good start, and I had to stay nearish the middle. But luckily for me, I overtook Wobbuffet at turn 1,
Oh wow.
and that is 1 position gained. Which, I was hoping for a bit more, because my starts were generally okay, especially after a bit of practice.
I'm up
But
4th.
I knew that my race pace was good. My race pace was better than my quali pace for once on this game. And I was hoping, I knew from practice, because like I said last week, I practiced a lot with Steve-O, and I knew I was probably about a 10th or 2 quicker than him per lap on average. So I thought, I can get him, and I can get P3, and then maybe get to Hasnain. On to lap 2, and right there, I get a penalty for doing exactly the same as what Steve-O did.
How did I get a penalty and Luke didn't? That's a fucking joke.
And it really was annoying. But
has
not really much happened in the next couple of laps. Obviously I fell back from a penalty, and then because of my slightly better race pace, I was catching up about 2 tenths a lap. About that. I thought I was generally the fastest driver on track. I know that Racing Green was saving fuel, so that helped. And everybody pits. And at this point I knew that they were on a 2-stop. My plan was always to 1-stop this. and I just saw there that my fuel wasn't great because I had to push. I had no other option. I had to push because saving fuel costs you far too much time in this car.
Don't know.
But 3 laps later, I am planning for my pit stop. Racing Green did get ahead during the last 3 laps,
But I'm now locked into
and I pit for the one and only time,
which I'm happy with. I don't mind.
and I'm hoping to come out just behind Wobbuffet. But I'm going to have to refuel a lot. Compared to Hasnain and Stevo, I'm going to have to refuel about 2 or 3 more laps, which is about 3 seconds, I believe. But unfortunately, because I have to refuel more, Bloody gets ahead of me. And this is where I was the most confident. I was very good on low fuel, on race pace. I could consistently do mid to low 57s. So I've gotten past Bloody by the time everyone else pits.
Quite a lot.
But you can see that my lap times weren't exactly setting the world alight. So my heart just dropped when I saw Hasnain come out ahead of me. So I'm going to try and get the undercut at turn 1, go around the outside of turn 2, but it's just too much ahead. I'm going to try my absolute hardest to try and get ahead of him,
He must have underfueled a little bit.
but obviously he's got fresher tyres, he qualified ahead of me. It's very unlikely that I'm going to get ahead unless he makes a mistake right now, which, as these are top drivers, like A+ drivers, they very rarely make mistakes, especially when it matters. So, annoyingly, I'm going to have to settle in behind him. And I'm still just pushing as hard as I can, just in case. But it's just not happening. Like, even there, I'm on my PB lap right now, and he's slightly pulling away. So my only hope for a podium now is that Stevo gets a bad pit stop or has used more fuel than what I expected. And I believe that he comes in at the end of this lap, because he was saying that he wanted to do the opposite of Hasnain, because if they pitted together, they would obviously just come out together and he'd still be behind. So yes, Stevo pits now, and I believe he had 10% more fuel, which means he could, in theory, jump us both. But let's see what happens.
That's really, really annoying.
So he's coming out there, and we're going to be side by side. And I've raised him for nearly. I knew that he was just going to try and defend the inside as much as possible. I'm going to get as tight line as possible, go around the outside, and that was the plan, to get ahead of him. And now I've got 6 laps to defend someone who on the day was quicker than me and had fresher tyres. Like, how is it going to happen? It's very, very hard. Even if, like, 1 or 2 laps is going to be hard, let alone 6 laps. But this does go on for the rest of the race, so I will leave you guys to watch this. This is possibly the best battle I've ever had on Gran Turismo. I may come in to commentate bits which I may need to explain, but it will probably just be live commentary from now, which may be a little bit quiet. But enjoy this fight, because this is a good one.
save again. Got around the outside of turn 2. Oh, this is absolute war. God, I need a drink. Yeah. He's actually just bumping me along. I can imagine he's getting very frustrated. Oh shit, that's a bit of a wobble. Come on, a few more laps. Yep. Give me a second. I'm going through sector 1. Ideally after a race, but go on. No. No.
hello, it's me again. So coming into this chicane, the last 3 laps, I've been braking early, and I knew that Steve-O would know that. So at this point, I'm 100% sure that he's going to go try and round the outside. So I'm going to brake late.
So I'm going to brake late on this one.
And I predicted that correctly.
I'm racing too much.
I do believe that if this was anybody else, I would not be able to defend for this long. But annoyingly, he's gotten up the inside.
He's on the inside. That's really not. I'm not going to get
So
the
the plan is to somehow just keep it round the outside or inside of either of these corners. I just knew that I had to stick it round to set the 1. Unfortunately, just like in lap 2, Steve-O got a penalty for slightly going on the grass at that point. And I did not know at this point. It was only after a race that I knew that he had a penalty. So at this point, I'm still thinking, how am I going to defend for this final lap? But my tyres are starting to really go off at this point. You can see the sliding about, me counter steering pretty much every single time that I'm turning. And like I said on the voice chat, 59.9 on that lap shows how much we were fighting. And to be honest, I was surprised that Wobbuffet behind us wasn't catching up at a faster rate. I thought he would be doing mid 57s, catching us up and putting the pressure on us to maybe snatch a 3rd place. But luckily he was not. You could actually see in the mirror that he slowed down there, and I did not notice. I'm still thinking, oh, he's right behind me, do not try and dive it again at the hairpin. And it's only now that I notice that he's that far behind.
He's gone a second and a half down.
And I said he's the second and a half down, and my teammates straight away just said, focus on the race, just get to the finish. Which, obviously, that is correct. But as you can see, I'm still sliding everywhere. I've got no grip whatsoever because we were just fighting too much. My tyres are gone. And he's already caught up nearly a whole second. So I knew that he wasn't able to get anything in this chicane. But we have raced on this track before and he has overtaken me around the outside of the last corner. So I know that it's possible that he can do something here. But I just stick to my line and I somehow defend it.
How did I defend that? Oh, yes. Come on.
And you could see, well, here, I was happy about that.
Oh, fucking hell, that was tough.
these are all the results. I believe at this point it was me, Hasnain and Stevo all very equal on points, pretty much. Hasnain may have been 1 or 2 ahead actually. But into the sprint race, nothing happened on the first 2 laps. I started 2 seconds behind the guy in front of me because it's rolling starts. And it took me 2 laps to even catch up. So Wobbuffet goes down the inside of Pinky Boy, and so do I. Like, I know that he's going to be fair, so I had to get as far ahead of Sevo and Racing Green as possible. I'm really not comfortable on these soft tyres at all. Unlike last week where I was happier on the softs, I have no pace on them this week. I was so much happier on the hards. As you can see that Sevo is catching up at a vast rate of knots. And I could defend when I had worse tyres, but this time I try and undercut him. Like I try and let him go through and then go round the outside of him. And I misjudged it. And unfortunately, Stevo is now ahead of me. Coming on to lap 4, I knew everybody was going to pit. I'm still opening myself for a 2-stop. My plans coming into this race was a 4 stint, a 3 stint, and a 3 stint. Because I knew that the tyres were awful. But I pitted on lap 4 just so I have the opportunity to 1-stop if I need to. Like if I've got track position and there's so many cars right behind me, I will not stop. But if I've got a gap behind me, I will. Because I think you lose about 3 or 4 seconds at most if you're not pitting for fuel. But at this point, I'm in 7th, halfway through a race. I'm thinking I can maybe get a 3rd or a 4th. So, at this point, I knew that this is Racing Green's strongest corner. I knew that he was just going to dive up there. I should have really just covered it. But I'm still just thinking of strategy at this point. Like, how can I get further ahead? How can I maybe win this race? Or get ahead of Stevo? And I noticed that there's a 4-second gap behind us. So I'm still at this point, I'm saying I'm pitting lap 7. Because I could also get a fastest lap point bonus. But these two get wedgie at turn 1, and I knew that I had to get it around the outside of turn 2. Which I'm making my way through, but unfortunately, for some reason, that's a penalty. Which, like in the feature race, I think it's a little bit unfair. And annoyingly, it didn't even all go when I tried to get rid of it. So I've just lost 3 seconds to the 2 ahead of me. But I'm still going to pit. I've got nothing to lose at this point. And I just wanted to pit for the fastest lap. Get an extra point. Come back to maybe 5th. And it's just limiting the bad race that I've had. But as you can see, Wobbuffet and Ninja Snake both got ahead of me, and almost Django as well. Because of that penalty, because I had to fight with Wedgie. But coming on to lap 9, this is a lap that I wanted to do my fastest lap on. And I knew I could do mid to late 54s relatively simply. I was probably getting 54.7s, 54.8s comfortably. I was 2 tenths up on the fastest lap, but it's not going to happen if you have to overtake a Subaru and a Toyota who came 5th and 6th in the feature race. Like if they were slower drivers, then I may have been able to get past easier and still go for the fastest lap. But that's just racing for you. Like, things go right, things go wrong. This one went wrong. I got the inside of Wobbuffet knowing that I have 3 lap fresher tyres, but earlier in the race he was pushed off by Ninja Snake. That's why he's so far down compared to us. And he said after the race that he was really in a bad mood and he was not letting anyone go. Which is why it kind of pushed me off. It's one of those where it's obviously his fault, but shit happens. And I could have waited for turn 1. But at the same point, I'm now not angry, but I'm less than happy with not being in 6th, chasing after Wedgie. So at this point, I'm thinking I'm now losing 4 points to Stevo. I only gained 2 in the feature race. So it's a -2 for the whole round.
That's an extra 2 points, annoying.
But Wedgie makes a mistake.
Oh,
I get up to 5th.
That's 5th. That's
So it's still a -1 to Stevo, but this was also one of my tracks where I was just hoping to come out of it not too far behind. And I would have taken 5th before the race started. I would have liked the podium, but yeah. Considering how a race went, considering I was focusing far too much on strategy rather than fighting, I will take a 5th place. In the championship, I believe I am about, I think it's 3 points behind Stevo. Which, after 2 races which I was expecting to do badly on, I'm somewhat happy with. I was expecting to be about 5 or 10 points behind at this point in the championship, so even though I'm still behind, it is a net +2, +3 points from what I was expecting. And especially coming into Red Bull Ring next week, which is my favourite track in my favourite cars, and the Hyundai is very good round there. I'm not expecting, but I'm hoping for at least a P2 in the feature race, and hopefully a podium in the sprint race. I'm wanting to gain P2 in the championship overall, coming into a race after. And this, I believe, is where my fight for the P2 in the championship starts. Obviously Racing Gran is going to win the championship unless he breaks his game or whatever, or suddenly becomes bad. Like, he's won the championship. This is a fight for P2 between me, Stevo, and Hasnain. Maybe Wobbuffet, but he's struggled in the first 2 rounds compared to what he should be. But I'm expecting him to be a relatively distant 5th, with us 3 fighting for 2nd. But, as I said, Red Bull Ring next week. Very excited for it. And I will see you then. Goodbye.